Oh, great. For Jim McGaw or anyone else who wants to address it, I understand the problems with superior autobiographical memory. Is there any reason to think that we couldn't chemically enhance other kinds of memory skills for doctors deciding a diagnosis or people playing Jeopardy?
Well, sure. But remember that the way that this works is selectively. That is, the drugs that will enhance memory, and they work in humans as well as laboratory animals, because there's now extensive work by a Dutch group using amphetamine. Amphetamine administered immediately after training enhances memory, but you have to catch it within a certain period of time. And so that means that it's not the case that these experiments show that every memory can be enhanced by drugs. It says that there's selectivity. You have to have an experience and you inject the drug, and it works in the same way as though you had become more excited at that time. And so the idea that somehow you would take a drug and everything would be elevated to that level seems, in the first instance, unlikely. Secondly, there are huge individual differences. For example, in working with rats, we have to adjust the dose according to the strain of the rats or the mice. They all will differ, and I would imagine that each one of us in here would require a different dose to do the de-amphetamine effect, let us say, and so given everyone the same dose, it wouldn't work. Now, I'm confident that it is difficult because pharmaceutical industry has spent countless millions of dollars in the last 40 years trying to develop such drugs. Every single one has failed. There is not a memory-enhancing drug despite millions and millions of dollars, and it's for those reasons that I've just described, I believe. Now, I have been wrong on occasion. I may be wrong on this occasion as well, but that's my opinion.
Super, and a quick follow-up. Is the first-person nature of the memories important? In other words, if one of these people was sitting in on a chemistry class, they're having the experience of hearing information about chemistry. Are they likely to recall that information, or is that different because it's not autobiographical in the same way?
In a sense, it is autobiographical because it's part of their lives. Let me give you an example. One of our subjects who at the time was 32 years old, I asked her if she knew who Bing Crosby was. Now, Bing Crosby is of my era, not of her era. But she said, yes, she knew who he was. And I said, do you know what happened to him? Because I'm looking at a book where I have the information. She says, oh, yes, he died on a golf course in Spain. And I said, well, how do you know that? Well, my mother was driving me to soccer in the afternoon, and it came on over the radio. That's how she remembered. Well, I probably heard that over the radio or saw it on TV, but I certainly didn't remember it. So they capture these events. That became part of her autobiographical memory because she learned about it during the course of one day. But it doesn't mean that it has integrative information. For example, this same person I'm talking about was a very mediocre student. She graduated from college, but on a thin edge of graduation, and did not even do well in courses that would require a lot of memorization. So it's not memorization, it's capturing things that occur during the course of her daily life.
Thanks.
So I understand in an ordinary population why selectivity in memory would have developed generally, but in the people with superior autobiographical memory, the question is whether there's some kind of, whether they lack the crowding out problem that you would think would have precluded the development of non-selective memory across the population. So are the people that you deal with particularly bad at learning the important lessons in life, and the things that you should have been able to generalize based on memory to be able to perform important functions? So they're so flooded with the trivial that they haven't been able to essentially generalize in the ways that memory would have taught us things. I don't mean in conditioning sense, it's like, taking your hand away from a stove, but other things that would have developed from more declarative memory.
Well, yes and no. They live fairly normal lives. Let me run down the occupations. One of them is a radio news announcer in Wisconsin. One of them was the producer of the Discovery Channel series on ice truckers. How many of you ever saw an ice truckers film? He produced Ice Truckers. Another is a solo violinist in New York of some quality. She was in the pit orchestra of South Pacific, and she's now on tour with a major orchestra. Let me see. Another is an assistant to a school principal. They have ordinary jobs. It's hard to say the degree to which they are either enhanced or impaired by this. You would not recognize any of them were they here in the group. It is the case that only one of them is married, and she's been married 3 times. That's Mary Lou Henner, the actress who was a star of the television series Taxi. How many of you ever heard of Mary Lou Henner, the actress? She's one of the subjects. They all have another interesting feature. In my non-psychiatrically trained eye, they are all obsessive compulsive because they all have some degree of it. When interviewing them, I have to be very careful about it. I come to the memory part of it, and then I say, do you have anything you tend to do a lot of? I can't say, are you obsessive compulsive? I sort of try to draw it out. And then they will all confess that they have something which is rather extreme, like Mary Lou Henner, who is obsessed with how her closet is organized. You may have seen it on the 60-minute program. It's incredible. She has her shoes organized in a certain way, and she can remember the date of purchase and the day of last wearing of the shoes, even if it was 20 years ago. One of our subjects does not like current television, so he only watches television that appeared exactly 30 years ago. And he buys the DVDs, and every night he watches television programs of 30 years ago. And to make sure that they're accurate, they come without any commercials. He reinserts the commercials in them of 30 years ago, and he spends about half of his lifetime organizing and managing this DVD set so that he can watch these programs. So they all have these kinds of extreme obsessiveness, and that detracts from their lives. But if you take that out, they're pretty normal people. And so... Well, you know, we're all pretty normal too, and we all have our little glitches. So. By the way, for all of these questions that we continue to bombard them, how can you do this? How does it work? They always turn around to me and they say, why can't you do it? These people are as puzzled about us as we are about them.
So I have a broader question, and it may be a question that can't really be answered. And I know we have to break soon, so you won't have much time to give it a shot. I'm curious about the speed of our increase of our understanding of human memory and your sense of whether the field is moving very, very rapidly right now, whether it's moving at sort of a normal pace compared to the last 20 years, whether we've plateaued. How quickly are we advancing right now in our basic understanding of human memory?
Well, I can say in terms of emotional memory, it's pretty mind-boggling right now. You know, if you asked me 15 years ago what the amygdala does from the human work, I would say, well, fear memories, right? Because that's where the first studies were. And yet we see now a whole variety of different kinds of aspects of emotional memory and social memory that the amygdala mediates. And sometimes where emotion is enhancing memory and sometimes where it's not. And so you know, the information is really coming in at a pace that's almost hard to keep up with, I would say.
I'd say it's moving rapidly, but you have to go back to the mid-1950s when it really started moving. And as Anthony said early on, one of the key things is that we learned that memory is not memory, but there are many forms of memory. And that was new, and it's terribly important to understand that we don't have a memory system in our brain. We got a bunch of memory systems in our brain that work in different ways and involve different parts of the brain, and that's being elaborated with the advent of lots of technology. Every time we get some new technology, that new technology then enables us to learn more about how the brain works. I mentioned high-performance liquid chromatography, for example. The fact that we can actually measure the release of something that's going on in the brain while an animal is doing something is phenomenal when you think about it. When you think of the techniques of MRI, fMRI, and so on, it's just phenomenal. So that this is accelerating the knowledge in relation to concepts. that were developed actually beginning about 1957, these concepts of different forms of memory. So I'd say we're in a very rapidly developing time in which it's very difficult for those of us who are in the field to keep up with what's going on. That's at least my belief.
I'm just reliving the moment when I came back to MIT for a second job interview, where I walked into a room and I was surrounded by a bunch of faculty who asked me the question, we believe the field of memory is dead and everything has basically been discovered. Defend why we should sort of move in this direction. And I'm going to defer to, it's amazing, I got the job, defer to Kevin and Jim's response here. It does seem like an exciting time. The technologies are allowing us to look at memories from many different vantage points, both behaviorally and neurobiologically. And, but you're going to have to actually keep me honest in terms of time, which I believe we're probably over.
I don't have my watch, but if it's, we have how much more time? That is time. So we have a 10-minute break now.
Okay, sorry, Beth, and
That's
thank you.